audience, we are almost closer to the sunset, and I am sure जब भी आप अपनी अपनी जगह पे बैठे बैठे वो hot cup of coffee you must be sipping and enjoying the entire session. So we have हमारे पास और एक और बहुत ही अच्छे स्पीकर हैं आज आई हैं हमारे साथ. वी हैव शायरी. इसके पहले कि वो पूरा सेशन ले और आपको और ज्यादा एनवायरनमेंट के बारे में बताए, मैं उनके बारे में 2-3 लाइन बोलूंगी. शी इज अ टेक्निकल नेगोशिएटर with a strong background in real estate transaction. She's a qualified architect and have done her masters in real estate from University of Glasgow, UK. She's a very passionate about her work and try to do justice to the soul of the architectural design while trying to find a practical solution to the varied market responses. Over 10.5 years of extensive coordination work for township design, shopping malls, commercial building spread over 4 cities. She has worked on LEED certified green buildings, bioflic buildings, to name a few. This was a short introduction about her, and Shairi, over to you.
Thank you so much, Rashi, and thank you for the lovely introduction. So yes, I do come from a background of real estate and construction, and the last bit of it is like what I have started is something called All About Architecture, which gained on from my experience as working as an architect. While we are talking about sustainability, green in the construction sector, I would like to have a small discussion surrounding whether green as a subject is a luxury or whether it is a necessity. Because whenever we try and speak about green or sustainability, there is a challenge where we see there is always a premium which is kind of added onto the cost. And most people believe like whenever you have to go in for a sustainability part of the design, you have to kind of add or spend an extra money to it. So what is the basic, whether that is true, like that is the core of going green, that is what it is about, or there is something more to it, is what I would like to take in over with the discussion in today's evening. I'm sure you have been having a very lovely session for the past 2 days and very action-packed with different subjects. But again, we see that the entire world, though they are talking while implementation, there is a hiccup. And they have that concern as to whether if I try to change my strategy towards building sustainably and going towards a green architecture, whether I'll end up spending more or not. So just kind of around that idea is what I'm going to take the discussion forward in. I'm just going to share my screen right now. And yeah, so when we talk about green revolution, the question which I have framed for today's discussion is whether it's a luxury or a necessity. When we go down and look around, whenever we are kind of looking around in the present scenario in the market, whenever we talk about good food or a sustainable food, which is good for my health and organic food, it means you are going to pay some extra money to it. When we talk about sustainable clothing or green clothing lines, again, an extra premium which comes in with that part to it. Housing, construction, that's always goes in, like whenever you're going to buy a premium housing or like a home which is being bought in by the renters, we always hear that it is going to have, you have to pay some extra money or extra premium because the homes have been built in a sustainable manner. So what is this premium that people keep on talking about, and why is this premium kind of a part of the green concept or the things that we are seeing around today? Is it something really that we have to be penalized because we want to move towards whatever is called the green architecture or the green part to it? Or there is a bigger reason behind it, or it can be done without actually spending the extra penny? So in the present day scenario, this I would take into account on a very basic concept of demand and supply in the market. When we look at, this is like the population growth. The pink line that you see is a rate at which the population is growing. And in the bluer part of the red shape is the way the population has grown over the past few centuries. In the, like between the 1760s and the 1800s, the growth has been pretty slow. There has not been too much of a growth in the world population. 1780s is the time, from 1780s to the 1800s is where industrial revolution came. And that is the time the population also started to grow. What does industrial revolution mean? Industrial revolution means that we are automating many of the services which the population needs. So roti, kapra, makan that we showed in the earlier slide now is slowly moving towards automation. That means we are just going ahead with the production of the increased rise in demand from the increased population that we see. In 2020, this is where the world population stands. And with that, we are kind of going ahead with the increase in production for food, for clothing, and not to leave aside housing. As per UN reports that we keep on hearing, like almost 50% of the world population would be staying in cities by 2030. And in India, the population of 50% is supposed to be around 2050. Indian cities as such are very heavily populated, and the infrastructure, as we can see, the infrastructure is kind of struggling to meet up to the growing demands. Cities like Bombay, Delhi, Madras, Chennai, or Bangalore, Kolkata, they have started also buckling down with the growing population. We can see there is air pollution in certain spaces, there is water pollution in certain spaces. But was this the intent of building in cities? Cities as such were always, like throughout human history, were the centers in which people lived and stayed and conducted their trades. So whenever we talk about cities, cities is not a very new phenomenon, and it definitely did not start around the 1760s. It started in when human civilization started interacting with each other, they started trading, and they started coming in together and accessing or kind of taking the products which they are creating to a different city or a different clan altogether. They started settling around junctures through which locations, through junctures where movement or mobility would be easier. It can be at a very like besides a river, or it was in a position where their trade routes kind of came in. Silk routes is also an example of that, through which spices used to move around. But cities were growing very nicely at a particular point of time where there was not a very huge or a population growth, and people were using the resources which they have to build their cities or meet up with their requisitions. But like with the overlap of the growth of population and the industrial revolution, which means there was a growth in the demand and the supply of both homes and the utilities and the food, there became an imbalance. So what is the basic challenge which we are seeing? The world or the space that we stay in is limited, but our population is growing at a very fast pace. And that does mean that we are kind of eating up the resources with which we are trying to build the world that we are in. It would not have been a challenge some 200 years back or 100 years back, where we did not hear about the impact that we are creating on the society, and the negative impact, or the entire concept of creating pollutions was never a part. Like that is the reason why a material like plastic was used at such a very flexible way, but it's re back into the equation, or not being left back into the system, was not thought of properly. Plastic is not an evil, I would say. The challenge was kind of making that material and dumping it out into the oceans. That's an example. Replace plastic with aluminium, and if we start not thinking about the limitations of the resources and just keep on making it flexible, using it for many of the resources, and not think about the impact of what happens when we kind of lose out on the resources, is where the challenge comes in. So what does it mean? Does it mean that we need to become a bit more conscious about the resources that we are working on with? If we look around, we are looking at an impact of oil as a resource, which is becoming very costly to be used because it is getting limited. And that's the reason people are trying to move towards alternative products which can actually substitute oil. While we are seeing the impact of the use of oil on the environment being very negative, the challenges were not that thought of when the use was not happening in that huge quantity. The moment the demand started rising up, the impact immediately became very apparent. So bringing it down to the core part, it may not be just the product that we are talking about, it's the system that we are talking about. And that is where the challenge is right now, is what I would imagine to see at. For example, realtors which came in India, say some 30 years or 40 years back, were more concerned about making homes at a fast pace, meeting up to the demand without it kind of being bothered about the green part of it or kind of understanding the sustainability part of it. They were more concerned to meet the evolving demands. But the last decade kind of made sure with the rising impact of the concrete houses that we are building, the impact that it is creating is really a very negative one. And that is where we started moving towards green. It brings down to the concept again that the resources that we are using were not thought of as a very the resources, the concept of being kind of more careful with the resources we were using was not a question when the demand was not that high. But right now, we do not have that challenge. We saw in the earlier graph as well, the population is growing at a very fast pace, which means our demands are rising. With limited resources, if we want to move towards creating a lesser impact or a better impact for our own well-being, we need to start using lesser resources, and that is where the concept of the green comes in, and that has to happen over a period of time. What does this two terms, lesser resources, use of lesser resources over a period of time mean? So let's go into a bit more detailed part to it. Since we are talking about the construction sector, resources can be actually divided into three different segments and a bigger part to it. Resources in terms of material, including land or water that we talk about. Material which can be brick, RCC, steel that we are using to make our homes. It can also be the water usage which is happening over a period of time. It can be the land on which we are building a particular home. If we want to move towards more greener or much more sustainable spaces, we have to be very careful while we are choosing what to do with the material that we are building the home or the infrastructure with, or the land that we are building on with. Resource of energy. Why again is energy a point of concern, and why do we need to be conscious about its usage? Oil, like I mentioned in the earlier part, oil as a resource has been used, and we see its bigger impact. Coal, which generates energy for us, its negative impact we can see right now. Though the world is starting to move towards using EV or electronic vehicles, we really do not know the wider impact of the resources that a battery is being made to build up with. Maybe we'll cross the hurdle when we reach there, but that is what it is. Like, we have to be careful every time. Even while production of energy cannot be without a thought. It needs to have that concept of green or sustainability when we are thinking about it. And the third resource is the community that we have, which is helping us make this entire spaces. A community like a Vyapar Jagat, which has given us space to come and speak or communicate or learn about different ideas. That is from where we would be kind of knowing about new techniques and technologies and slowly trying to change the way in which we have been using the different resources. And this needs to happen over a period of time. And what do I mean by a period of time? If we look at um, so this is much more in details about the different points which I spoke about in the last slide. What do I mean by a period of time? So for any projects, when we think about being an architect, I would think about a project in different stages of a conception. So it can be, suppose I want to make a green room. When is the choice of going ahead to move towards building a green room? It can be at the conception stage. That is when I'm talking with the client, where the client has come in with their proposal. It can be at that part. It can be at the construction phase. It can be about the time when we actually making the home, choosing the material and the energy and the local spaces to kind of build that home. That can come down to that choices that we make at that stage can make it a green or a non-sustainable home. It can be during the lifespan of the building as well, or the project as well. So for example, when we are staying in a home, do we go and switch on the air conditioning anytime we want to, or we actually design the home in such a way that there's cross ventilation, which helps us move towards a much more greener or a less impact on the society? Do we kind of, when we're using water as a resource, we go ahead and waste the water? Or do we think about reusing back by maybe wasting the waste from some water can be used for plant waters, or it can be used for flushing or kind of for gardening or things like that? Do we think about it at each stage during the lifetime of it? And end of life also, that means like when a building is at the end part of it, from the construction angle, if we say, what do we do when a building is no more usable? Do we just put it into a scrap and it kind of goes into the waste, or we pull back bits and pieces of it back into the system to help it kind of like reduce the impact, reduce the waste that it is going out into the part? And that choice also can help us move towards being a sustainable or a green part to it. So when we come down, like over the past 10 minutes or 15 minutes that I've been speaking, what does green revolution mean for me? For me, I would see a green revolution is one in which we are using sources which are available to us in whichever sector that it might be, it in the construction, be it for the housing, when we are building our homes, when we are building our cities, roads, villages, communities, making our food choices, choosing our clothing line, whether we are trying to be more efficient about it, and along with that, whether we are seeing the impact on the environment with each choice that we make. Now, the challenge is we can never be 100% efficient. We can be efficient from the stage that we are in. Today, we can slowly move towards going or building towards a more sustainable option, but we can never become complete like a heretic where we are going and sitting on top of like a hill and kind of announcing everything. We have been brought into a society in a particular way where we are given certain resources. It can be from that stage where we can move towards becoming a bit more efficient from day 1 to day 10, and from day 10 to the next long term efficiency. So green is something which is, from our point, we realize like green is something which cannot be an option. It cannot become like an option. It becomes much more of a necessity for each one of us to leave a lesser impact on the environment. Why is it not so? Because the businesses which had come in earlier, they were really not impacted because of the demand, the lesser demand, or the lesser impact on the societies, they were not. But right now, the cost of being unsustainable is much higher than being sustainable. So I would like to kind of show a certain couple of examples where the tools in the construction industry people have been kind of, we know of green building guidelines like IGBCs or GRIHAs, which are available for designers. We can go on bank on vernacular architecture, circular economy as a concept. There are building bylaws which can help us to move towards choosing a greener life. There's something, a concept called a healthy building guidelines, which is concerned with the interiors of the project, which helps you move towards much more less and lesser impact on the society and on the environment as well. Net zero water, net zero waste, these all kind of ideas which are going as different subjects, they all come down together and can be clubbed in to understand those 2 points: lesser impact on the environment and being resource efficient. And this can happen when we work in communities, when we are working together and we are learning from each other, getting to access the tools which are there. And that kind of creates the awareness for more demand, bringing down the additional cost that we are seeing during this transition. The transition is what we are paying the premium for, and it is not for the product for which we are paying a premium for. I would also like to show a couple of examples where the typical concept of green products, which means a premium cost, has not been used. So these are kind of homes which I would like to show. One is a solar house in West Bengal. It was done from local materials of mud and bamboo. It's a 2-story structure house where it kind of even withstood Amphan, which was one of the most strongest cyclone which had hit Sundarban, the building is still standing. It has been done using green architecture. Local materials, when you are using, the cost does not go higher. It becomes more costlier when we try to go just for the fancy part to it, not really understanding what green means. The second example is of a coconut shell house in Mumbai. Raw materials which we kind of which ends up in our waste or garbage cans is being used to build in homes where the temperature is also kind of drops by 4 to 5 degrees, making your consumption of air conditioning also go down. The next part is an example of a home in Kerala. This is again a 12,000 square feet of home entirely made of bamboo. Bamboo, if it is kind of locally sourced, and bamboo and kind of raw materials from their mud and again adobe house kind of a building, if it is locally sourced, it makes the house much more sustainable and greener to say it. And the last but not the least example is a 100% recyclable house in Haryana, where it was made out of mud, bamboo tree, and other portions of materials which were lying around. It says that it's a 100% recyclable house that means the heat, again bringing down the air conditioning cost. So not only is the concept that green as a concept is costly, can be kind of be broken down. It can also be broken down the moment the demand also starts rising, and there is more awareness and more accessibility to the products, which brings down the cost, not making it a luxury anymore, but a necessity that we would like to fix it. So I would like to kind of end the discussion with a short video in which the basic concepts of the materials and the technologies have been discussed. I'm just going to share the screen right now, and you have to please tell me whether it's a short 2 minutes video. Do I have time for that, or should I stop?
Yeah, you have time. Sorry, just one note I want to say. I mean, you have to share your sound before you start playing the video. So,
Yeah.
so please share the sound, and then you can definitely
Yeah.
go ahead. Yeah. So you have to share your screen first, then you can you will find the option to share sound. Yeah.
Is it visible?
Yep, it is visible. Yep.
Living systems have been around for a few billion years and will be around for many more. In the living world, there's no landfill. Instead, materials flow. One species' waste is another's food, energy is provided by the sun, things grow, then die, and nutrients return to the soil safely. And it works. Yet as humans, we've adopted a linear approach. We take, we make, and we dispose. A new phone comes out, so we ditch the old one. Our washing machine packs up, so we buy another. Each time we do this, we're eating into a finite supply of resources and often producing toxic waste. It simply can't work long term. So what can? If we accept that the living world's cyclical model works, can we change our way of thinking so that we too operate a circular economy? Let's start with the biological cycle. How can our waste build capital rather than reduce it? By rethinking and redesigning products and components, and the packaging they come in, we can create safe and compostable materials that help grow more stuff. As they say in the movies, no resources have been lost in the making of this material. So what about the washing machines, mobile phones, fridges? We know they don't biodegrade. Here, we're talking about another sort of rethink, a way to cycle valuable metals, polymers, and alloys so they maintain their quality and continue to be useful beyond the shelf life of individual products. What if the goods of today became the resources of tomorrow? It makes commercial sense. Instead of the throw away and replace culture we've become used to, we'd adopt a return and renew one, where products and components are designed to be disassembled and regenerated. One solution may be to rethink the way we view ownership. What if we never actually owned our technologies? We simply licensed them from the manufacturers. Now, let's put these two cycles together. Imagine if we could design products to come back to their makers, their technical materials being reused and their biological parts increasing agricultural value. And imagine that these products are made and transported using renewable energy. Here we have a model that builds prosperity long term. And the good news is, there are already companies out there who are beginning to adopt this way of working. But the circular economy isn't about one manufacturer changing one product. It's about all the interconnecting companies that form our infrastructure and economy coming together. It's about energy. It's about rethinking the operating system itself. We have a fantastic opportunity to open new perspectives and new horizons. Instead of remaining trapped in the frustrations of the present, with creativity and innovation, we really can rethink and redesign our future.
So I would like to kind of end this here, saying that we are actually at a very interesting juncture where we as individuals, businesses, and as a country, we have realized that we just cannot keep on building or a mindless building as a process. We need to be much more conscious about our efforts. We need to move towards building more sustainable or more economically and environmentally friendlier options. And for that, I think the idea is to rethink the way how we have been functioning. So if we can, the cost and the impact is not going to be a luxury, but it is going to be the way the new generation lives their lives. So I think I'll be ending it here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sairi. I think very useful content you have shared through this particular session. एंड काफ़ी सारे लोगों को ऐसा लगता होगा जो ये कन्वेंशन जो है उसको देख रहे हैं, उसमें पार्टिसिपेट कर रहे हैं, कि हम हर बार कुछ चीज़ें जो है वो दोहराते हैं, बार बार एक ही चीज़ें कहने का ट्राई कर रहे हैं, है ना. बट so viewers, that is the request from our end. We all speakers, this particular platform is trying to convey the message that sustainability क्या है, सही मायने में sustainability क्या है, सिर्फ उसको समझना, उसके बारे में सुनना सस्टेनेबिलिटी नहीं है. उसको हम जो भी चीज़ें करते हैं, हम जो भी काम करते हैं, जहाँ पे भी रहते हैं, जहाँ पे भी घूमते हैं, तो सब जगह पे हम उसके बारे में सोचें. और जैसे सायरी ने बताया कि इट इज़ टाइम टू रीथिंक एंड इम्प्लीमेंट. तो इट इज़ समथिंग विच इज़ द नीड ऑफ एन आवर, बिकॉज अगले सेशन में डॉक्टर गीतिका ने भी बताया कि कब सोचेंगे, मतलब जब ये सब खत्म हो जाएगा उसके बाद में सोचेंगे कि अभी सॉल्यूशन क्या है इसका, है ना. तो इट इज़ अ टाइम वेर इन स्टिल वी हैव दोज रिसोर्सेज और चीज़ें जहाँ पे हम ये वर्ल्ड को बेहतर बना सकते हैं. तो that is the attempt that we are doing through this particular convention and awards. And I really thank to all the speakers like Sairi, those who are coming up with such a the great content which can help to lot of people in large. And we are sure, Sairi, that these efforts of yours, I mean, wherein you are doing a lot of research, you are doing a lot of study, and then we get the content to speak on 30 minutes, right? So definitely we are sure that these efforts will be useful and people will understand, and definitely will see the brighter and right and green future of the entire world, entire country, and jahan pe hum rehte hain. Thank you so much, Sairi, for your time and sharing your knowledge, insights. It was wonderful session.
Thank you so much, and thank you for creating such an opportunity where people on the eve of our Independence Day are actually talking about subjects which can make a difference without wasting our time on some other efforts. Like most people, most individuals and youngsters kind of go and just go and watch a movie or go and do some other effort. So what you are doing itself is what community building is about. That is what I mentioned. Like that is a part of the entire system to be much more successful. So thank you for creating this entire session. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much, Sairi, for joining us. And I vouch on Praveen's, words. It is exactly what we need. That is the need of the hour, because हम आगे बढ़ते जा रहे हैं without realizing कि क्या हम खो रहे हैं पीछे. So speakers like you and the other speakers that were there in the panel would definitely आज के session के बाद बहुत लोगों की life impact करने वाले हैं. So thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.